Good evening, everybody. I hope you're all well, wherever you are. I'm going to give a reading from a couple of chapters of my novel, The Eidolons, which has come up recently in discussions that we've had in our synthesized tarot course, that because of the apocalyptic nature of the discussion, where we recalled the Emperor Arcanum in Meditations on the Tarot, where the author writes that the key to the apocalypse is to practice it. These sections of the book, in fact the whole book, The Eidolons, does touch on apocalyptic themes insofar as they play out within the souls of individuals and groups. When I was a student, a friend of mine said something very insightful about the apocalypse, which I didn't quite understand at the time, but I've come to understand as time has gone on. I, in 1996, said that I thought we were living in apocalyptic times because I was experiencing a great parting of the veils. My own Christian spiritual initiation happened at that time when I was 21. And this, when you see beyond the veil like that, then the idea of the apocalypse becomes more comprehensible, and this is what Tomberg is alluding to in Meditations on the Tarot. But my friend said, do you not think it happens in everybody's lifetime, meaning the apocalypse? And this again touches on the matter of reincarnation or not, as the case may be, if you don't believe in it, and the idea that this is either the last life or the only life. The outcome's the same, and history is condensed within the individual, the microcosm, the Adam Kadmon, and the apocalypse is a very important, crucial, the ultimate aspect of the Western mystery tradition and the path of return. So, with no further ado, first of all, now there's poor light in here, so I'll have to use this because my eyesight isn't what it used to be either. So this is the chapter on the Queen, which I begin because the book, The Eidolons, is set in a 2-week period around the death of Queen Elizabeth II. So the week before in September and the week afterwards, it's a fortnight period in real time, as well as going into ancient history as well. But anyway, so hence the focus on the Queen within the book. And I open this chapter, which is about a third of the way through, with a quote from who is now King Charles III. In these uprooted times, there is a great need for constancy, for those who can rise above the clamour, the din, and the sheer pace of our lives, and help us rediscover those truths which are immutable and eternal. A need for those who can speak of that eternal wisdom, which is called the perennial philosophy. Yes, that's King Charles. A fan of René Guénon, which helps explain some of his thinking. The silver tray was loaded with porcelain and biscuits as Anna stood outside her great-grandmother's door and called to be let in. It was already 10 a.m, but Mrs. Roudnikova had always preferred to break her fast later in the morning. As usual, the door was silently unlocked and pushed ajar, but her great-grandmother somehow managed to get back to her throne before Anna had even put a nose over the threshold. "Good morning, darling." "Morning, Granny," Anna began cheerfully, but then stopped in her tracks and gave a little scream. She only just managed to avoid letting the tray crash disastrously to the floor. For the first time since her own mother had died 16 years ago, Mrs. Roudnikova was dressed from head to toe in black. The effect was truly dramatic. Setting down the at-risk tray, Anna sat down on the nearest chair. "Please tell me it's not Daddy." "Hush now, Anna Maria. It is not your father. Everything is fine. Well, sort of fine. I didn't mean to scare you. Now come, pour the tea." The two women sat drinking their tea in silence until a greater sense of harmony had returned and Mrs. Roudnikova was ready to explain herself. As soon as that moment came, Anna noticed a portrait of Queen Elizabeth II placed prominently on the altar cabinet against the east wall of the room. She put her hand to her mouth. "Oh no, is it the Queen?" "I'm afraid so. The Queen is on her deathbed and only has hours to live. Everything is about to change. You must prepare yourself." She held up a hand to prevent her great-granddaughter from asking pointless questions. "The American will soon arrive. Unless you feel that something is badly amiss, you may bring him to me when he asks." "But what about the Queen? Shouldn't we tell someone?" "No, you mustn't say anything. There will be an announcement later today. Change into more suitable clothes and say the Mass for Mary. Candles must be lit in the shrine." Anna looked down at her green dress. "I'll change now before the shop opens. One more thing, Anna Maria. As you know, we are always being watched. It is better if you don't draw too much attention to the American. Let us try to ensure our movements go unnoticed, at least until Tristan arrives." "Why is Tristan coming?" Anna asked, puzzled. Tristan was a long-time student of her father, and while she'd known him all her life, he never came up to London, and they only ever met in Glastonbury. "He's going to drive you to the West Country." Anna felt a pang of fear again. "Why won't you tell me what all this is about, and who you think is watching us?" To her great discomfiture, the much older lady avoided her eye, which was most unusual. "You will find out soon enough. I am not permitted to interfere in your karma. I can only try to keep you out of harm's way." That was more than Mrs. Roudnikova had ever said on the subject, and the admission truly alarmed her great-granddaughter. "Shouldn't we call the police?" "And tell them what, Anna Maria? That there are ghosts in the streets and nameless people who like to sit in Café de Paris and look into the shop window for hours a day?" "There is little we can do except try to give them the runaround and marshal our forces." As soon as Anna had left the room, Mrs. Roudnikova took out a large set of tarot cards from a secret drawer inside the table. Over a century old, they were hand-painted in a distinctive Art Deco style, and there was no other deck quite like it in the world. Reverting to her native tongue, which was the Russian equivalent of old-fashioned Queen's English, she whispered under her breath to the members of her chain, who were never far from mind. "Maria, Maria, dear Grigory Otonovich, esteemed Vladimir Alexeyevich, my friend Serge, Vsevolod, beloved Valentine, fellow traveller, Nabusar. A Russian can't be happy alone. He or she needs the participation of others." One by one, or two by two, they materialized round the table and held the space in reverence. Happiness on earth begins only when a person, having forgot himself, goes on to live for others. All were reminded of a rule of their order and reason for their gathering again at that moment. As it is written, people who have gathered in the name of an idea and its implementation develop a common plan, rebuild their psyche accordingly, and their association becomes an organization with a mental face and a mental collective body. It is good to place the sun in the center of its planetary composition and coordinate the other planets around their natural center. A moment of deep reverence passed between them, as heads were bowed in devoted remembrance of their shared fraternal ideals. After a time, Butator spoke up in solemn tones. "The highest good a person can obtain in this world is unity with his fellow men and women. I thank you for bringing us together at this time, Nina Pavlovna. We have prepared for over 100 years, and the veils are parting at long last. Mikhail raised his voice next. I received a letter from our brother Leonid. He looked round the table as he reached into his breast pocket and took out a folded paper. I think you will agree that it strikes to the very heart of our mission. The foundations of human deeds are so complex and diverse, in particular the art of politics, like black magic, so dark and subtle. There was a ripple of assent around the table, and Mikhail looked up with raised eyebrows, nodding grimly as he continues. From Leonid. Today there is no electricity in Berlin. Tomorrow there is no coal in London. But it will not be long yet, and who knows? Maybe all the roads will stop. Steamboats will stop at their harbours, and bony famine will reign over Europe, sweeping away the living remnants of the night and the guilty. So fate will avenge the violation of oaths which the agreement swore before the God of humanity. Like a telegraph operator on a sinking steamer that through the night and darkness sends out calls, come to the rescue, we are dying, save our souls. So I, moved by the love of human goodness, throw into the dark space my plea for the dying people. My friend, I will not tell you how painful and scary it is for us in our present Russia. Mountains of verbal lies have piled up in the world, and under this pile of powerless and sluggishness, it seems a true word is rejected by 1,000 ugly lies. How can I open my mouth for prayer when the drunken Satan himself is serving the throne? Every single Englishman, to you I turn. Save our souls. It's you, on yours. Understand that this is not a revolution. What is happening in Russia has already begun in Germany, and from there onwards. This is chaos and darkness caused by the war of their black underground, and the same war which was created for the destruction of the world. Hundreds of millions of money have been thrown into the purchase of printing. Thousands of machines are being manufactured. Lies are being washed away. Thousands of liars are screaming, murdering water, inhabiting the world with monstrous phantoms and masks, among which its living human face is lost. The very air is bribed and lies. These fake radios, that diabolical circles entangle every editorial office. These nocturnal passions that intrusively knock on the door, climb into the cars, muddy the mind. But I also know something else. As there are people among bipeds, so there are people journalists, you, to whom it has long been given the name of the Knights of the Holy Spirit, who writes not with ink, but with nerves and blood, and to them I appeal, to everyone individually. Help me. The heartrending testimony was followed by a shocked silence, whilst Mikhail folded the letter, placed it back in his pocket, and made a prayer of his hands. Oh my God! Vladimir got to his feet. It is more than a century since the first horror. The planets of the Aquarian age have aligned as we forecast. The mirror of Atlantis is reflecting our Eidolons, and we stand at the breaking dawn of new horror. Our brothers are being sacrificed to murder our brothers. The vicious wheel keeps turning, and our chain is still missing a vital link. Will she help us resolve it, as Christ intended? Somebody just tried to come in. His voice broke with emotion, and Serge raised a calming hand. Vladimir Alexeyevich, I know you received a letter from her long ago, but there have been no communications other than that. She will not admit any of us to her presence. It's been the same since Vadim Karlovich got arrested. She loved him very much, you know. It was a great blow to see the young ones sacrificed. Serge looked around at them all. But time has passed, and although she is still held within the ring past knot, her binding is loose enough for her to go free if she so desires. But how much does she desire it? The binary is not yet resolved, and she perceives a certain advantage in her present position, which is something her master secured from the outset. Vladimir got to his feet again. You are right, Serge. Elena Petrovna may be deprived of her highest faculty, but she has forged alliances in the most unexpected spheres. She has made peace with many former opponents, even those in Paris. Those who once shunned her entirely now sit with her at cards. They have come to understand that they have a more unified cause than the ones they surmised. They see that at some stage there must be unity between pathwalkers, as the field widens up ahead of the gateway. As you know, brothers and sisters, all of us are waiting at the same final gates. His face fell. All the same, I admit it irks me how the French are granted visiting rights, whilst we, her countrymen and women, are kept waiting. René is our visitor as we speak. Can you believe it? After all he said in Paris, I'm told they get on tolerably well now. There was an ironic chuckle at that, but then the tone became serious again. Perhaps she feels that members of her forecastle did not rush quickly enough to her defense, Maria said regretfully. Or perhaps she felt bad when the Babylon working went ahead because she wasn't able to combat Hubbard's black magic, Chekhov mused. She shouldn't blame herself, though. It all went awry when Alistair lost control of Jack, and the witchcraft was founded. The Scarlet Woman performed a rite to birth the Wormwood Star during the summer solstice of 1953. But she was very confused, as you know, he added, pulling a face. My atmosphere, presence, and radiation techniques were also subverted, he added, looking around the table. The war engines arrived. All hell has broken loose, Vladimir agreed. We have been forced to witness the most terrible of Igor birth and grown to an almost unimaginable scale. As we step further into the Fourth Industrial Revolution, the very concept of humanity is under threat. The enemy is using the qualities of Kali Yuga to its advantage. She has to help us contain the behemoth. Most certainly this is true, agreed Chekhov. People are worshipping false idols. The doctrine of binaries has been wholly misconstrued and subverted by the sorcerers. Many of the church faithful are moving into the catacombs, as Valentin predicted. The time has come for us to act. Serge took up the baton again. Somehow they comprehend the start of dualism marks the beginning of our life and our thought. Just as two parallel lines meet to infinity, which mathematically is right but remains concretely incomprehensible to us. Even the dualism of our thoughts finds its point of fusion in the world of the absolute. But for some of those called to bring it down to the sex centre, it is traumatic to witness. Let us recall a third of the great arcanum, the binary, eternity and death, positive and negative attributes of the mystery unified in the oneness of the androgynous Lord. This fusion of more and more and less in the absolute world represents for the initiatory teaching the mystical wedding of the two poles of the androgynous. The inconceivable Father, the absolute, and the mystical marriage of the androgyne will always remain first fruits of our dualistic thinking. These first fruits give the supreme point where is found the inherent contradictions, by virtue of its very essence, to the dualistic thought. When the initiate passes from the sphere of the first fruits the conceptions of our relative existence on our world from the fall, he draws a line called by tradition, threshold of knowledge, curtain of the sanctuary, veil of Isis. He finished his impromptu speech with a gentlemanly bow and sat back down as if oblivious to the fact that the atmosphere had become electrifying. The master of the group, Mr. Name of Butator, seized the moment of potential. "We must do everything in our power to resolve things, Nina Pavlovna. Would you cut the cards?" They watched as Mrs. Roudnikova shuffled her priceless tarot cards and spoke a prayer over them in Russian, Hebrew and French. The rest of the gathering bowed their heads in concentration as she cut them and began to deal. Butator was dealt to the magician and his wife Maria the Empress, Valentin the hermit and his wife the guardian angel. Serge was given the sun, and Vsevolod the star. Vladimir took up the mantle of the fool, and Nabasar the pope. Nina herself was high priestess. All the cards had been signed by the artist on the reverse. Vladimir turned his over and smiled to see the name of his good friend Marcotoune. The star smiled as well and finally spoke. "Why don't we deal for her as well, Nina Pavlovna? If the indications are good, we might proceed further." He looked at Vladimir, who inclined his head in assent, and then around the table to see if all were in agreement. "Take two, Nina Pavlovna," urged Nabasar. "One each from the majors and the minors." It was a good suggestion, and they all watched intently as Mrs. Roudnikova closed her eyes in deep concentration. The card which was drawn from the major arcana was the Emperor, which produced a delighted clap from both Marias. It was an excellent start, the best they might have hoped for. It completed the tetragrammaton. The guests began to join hands, form a united arc in front of Mrs. Roudnikova as she shuffled again. This time a card leaped out and set itself beside the Emperor, which had been placed in the centre of the table. She united her hands with Vladimir and Nabusar, who were seated at her left and right, respectively. "That settles it," said the latter in satisfaction. "The Queen of Wands has spoken."